Now next we will be discussing miscellaneous group. See, I have named it miscellaneous because under this heading we are going to discuss multiple short important topics. So these are important topics because sometimes questions are asked, but they are not that important that we have to discuss them in detail. So we are going to discuss few important points about these short topics. Okay, like first one is phacomatosis. These are also referred to as genodermatosis. So these are genodermatosis, that is dermatosis, skin conditions which are genetic. Okay, so these are genetic conditions which present with skin lesions like tuberous sclerosis. Tuberous sclerosis. Now tuberous sclerosis is genetic condition where genes are involved like TSC1 gene and TSC2 gene. These genes are present on chromosome number 9 and 16. Clinically, there are various lesions which are characteristic of this condition, and these lesions are, so if we talk about skin, over skin you can get various lesions like ash leaf macules. They are generally seen over trunk. Then shagreen patch, which is seen over lumbosacral area. Corneal tumors, these are periungual fibromas. These are periungual fibromas, so they are generally present around nails, so outgrowths which are coming out around nails. Adenoma sebaceum, these are facial angiofibromas. These are facial angiofibromas. Confetti macules, dental pits. Confetti macules are hypopigmented macules generally seen over legs. These facial angiofibromas, that is very obvious, they are present where? Over face, and sometimes over teeth you might get dental pits. Okay, so these are various cutaneous and dental findings which might be present in these patients. Now remember that not only these are present, there are few other changes, like these patient may have mental retardation, epilepsy. So these are the features which you need to remember, but among them these cutaneous features are very important. Like many a times they ask that shagreen patch is associated with, or ash leaf macules are seen in, corneal tumors are adenoma sebaceum. So already these questions have been asked. Now I am going to give you a mnemonic here. With the help of this mnemonic you can very easily remember the features which are seen in tuberous sclerosis, and this mnemonic is NASA में RIA, because this is a condition where various cutaneous findings are seen, neurological findings are seen, and there are few tumors which are associated. So we are going to discuss cutaneous findings, neurological findings and tumors, and all these can very easily be remembered by this simple mnemonic, that is NASA में RIA. So as I told you, nails get involved in the form of fibromas. These are known as corneal tumors. Ash leaf macules are seen, shagreen patch is seen, and adenoma sebaceum is seen. Okay, so these are the cutaneous findings. These patients may have mental retardation and they might suffer from epilepsy. So they have low IQ and epilepsy. Then in heart, patient may develop rhabdomyoma. Then they may have subependymal tumors like astrocytoma. which is subependymal. So with the help of this mnemonic, you can very easily remember all these points. Rhabdomyoma, subependymal tumor, astrocytoma, these are the tumors associated. Neurological findings like mental retardation and epilepsy, and cutaneous findings like adenoma sebaceum, saccharine patch, ash leaf macules, and nails are also involved in the form of tumors which are known as Cornean tumors. Okay, these are 9 alphabets. Okay, so among these 9 alphabets, the middle 3, they form a triad which is known as Vox triad. So Vox triad consists of 3 things, and that is mental retardation, epilepsy, and adenoma sebaceum. And that is the reason why this condition, that is tuberous sclerosis, is also known as epiloia. Epi is for epilepsy, LO is for low, and I is for IQ. So low IQ, that is mental retardation, and this A is for adenoma sebaceum. So this is the triad which is seen, and you can very easily remember this triad by this name, that is epiloia. Second genodermatosis of achomatosis is neurofibromatosis. Neurofibromatosis. Okay, so neurofibromatosis, type 1. The gene involved are NF1 and NF2, which are present on chromosome number 17 and 22. So this is also genodermatosis, genetic condition where these genes are involved, NF1 and NF2. Now clinically, these patients may present with CAM, which stands for Café Aule macules. So why they are known as Café Aule macules? Why you go to cafe? For coffee. So cafe stands for coffee, and lait is for milk. So these are coffee in milk macules. Okay, so these are known as coffee in milk macules. So these are Café Aule macules, these are coffee in milk macules. And why they are known as coffee in milk? Because they are coffee in color, they are dark in color. So these are hyperpigmented lesions present over lighter skin color. So lighter skin like milk, having dark lesions like coffee. So coffee in milk. So Café Aule macules, these are hyperpigmented lesions. These are hyperpigmented. Then another important lesion which is seen is freckling. Now this freckling can be present over axilla or inguinal area. So this is known as axillary freckling or inguinal freckling. Okay, so normally freckles are seen over exposed areas due to excessive sun exposure, but in these patients you might get this freckling over hidden areas like axilla and inguinal. So axillary or inguinal freckling is seen. Then you will get neurofibromas. Neurofibromas. Sometimes these neurofibromas can become very large, giant neurofibromas. These are known as plexiform neurofibromas, plexiform neurofibromas. And they show a sign which is known as buttonhole sign. Buttonhole sign. Buttonhole sign is that these neurofibromas are very soft, and if with the help of finger, if you press them, they go within the skin, and once you release, they come out. Okay, so this is very much like buttonhole, because in the shirt there is a buttonhole and through which the button passes out and in. So this is the buttonhole sign which is seen. Similarly, the freckling which is present in these patients who are suffering from neurofibromatosis over axilla and inguinal area. So this axillary freckling is also known as crow sign. So these are two signs which you can remember: freckling, crow sign, buttonhole sign, neurofibromas. So let us see a few images from this miscellaneous group. The first one which we have discussed is genodermatosis. Like here you can see these are Café Aule macules. So these are dark lesions which are brown in color like coffee and present over lighter skin color. So these are known as Café Aule macules. Okay. Now remember that if you want to diagnose a case of neurofibromatosis, then Café Aule macules is included in the diagnostic criteria, and they are considered as one of the diagnostic criteria only if they are more than 15 mm in adults and more than 5 mm in children, and number should be more than 6. So measure it, and if the longest longitudinal diameter is more than 15 mm in adults, then you can consider that as 1 cafe au lait macule. Then multiple cutaneous neurofibromas, these neurofibromas might be present over the skin. They can be multiple and they are very soft, and if you press them, they go within the skin, and once you release, they come out. This is known as buttonhole sign. Sometimes they can be very large, and these large neurofibromas are known as plexiform neurofibromas, okay, and if they are very troublesome, they can be excised, but since this is a genetic condition, so new neurofibromas keep on forming. This is the characteristic adenoma sebaceum, which are facial angiofibromas. These are the lesions which are seen in tuberous sclerosis, and they generally develop over center part of the face like nose, forehead and cheek, and also nasolabial fold. So over these sides you can see these small adenoma sebaceum. These are the lesions of tuberous sclerosis. So after genodermatosis, next miscellaneous disorder is neutrophilic dermatosis. Neutrophilic dermatosis. Under this heading, we will be discussing two important disorders. One is Sweet syndrome, and second is pyoderma gangrenosum. Pyoderma gangrenosum. How they clinically present? Clinically, Sweet syndrome present with tender, erythematous nodules with fever, raised ESR and leukocytosis. So tender erythematous nodules with fever, raised ESR and leukocytosis, and because this is the type which is associated with fever, this is also known as acute febrile type of neutrophilic dermatosis. While pyoderma gangrenosum presents with ulcer with undermined edges, so undermined edges are seen. Association, Sweet syndrome is usually associated with AML. It might also be associated with adenocarcinoma. While pyoderma gangrenosum is usually associated with inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammatory bowel disease like ulcerative colitis more than Crohn's disease. Also it might be associated with CML, rheumatoid arthritis, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So these are other associations, commonly ulcerative colitis. Drug of choice for both these conditions is same, and that is systemic corticosteroids. So systemic corticosteroids are the drug of choice. Now you might be wondering that why this is grouped under neutrophilic dermatosis, because both these conditions, that is Sweet syndrome and pyoderma gangrenosum, if you take biopsy from the lesions, you will get deep dermal neutrophilic infiltrate. So because these are the examples of deep dermal neutrophilic infiltrate, they are included in neutrophilic dermatosis. Then third condition is ichthyosis. Third is ichthyosis. Now all of you know that this term ichthyo means fish like, and that is the reason why this term is used, because in this condition fish like scaling is seen. Fish like scaling. So in this condition fish like scaling is seen. Now there are different types of ichthyosis, like ichthyosis vulgaris, X-linked ichthyosis and lamellar ichthyosis. Now all these are genetic conditions, because this is autosomal dominant, this is X-linked recessive, and this is autosomal recessive. So all these are congenital types of ichthyosis. So ichthyosis can be grouped into two, that is congenital and acquired. Okay, so this is congenital. If we talk about acquired, we have already discussed leprosy and clofazimine. Both are examples of acquired ichthyosis. Why? Because leprosy, there is autonomic system involvement, due to which there is loss of sweating and skin becomes very dry, and sometimes fish like scales can be seen. And similarly, clofazimine have one side effect, it can cause ichthyosis like skin changes. Okay, so that's why both these are acquired causes of ichthyosis, while these are congenital. Now in all these three conditions, the lesions are similar, that is, you are going to get fish like scales. Okay, but sites are different. Like here, these fish like scales are mainly present over extensors. Here extensors as well as flexors get involved, extensors more than flexors, while here whole body gets involved. So over whole body you might get these scales. Now when this child suffering from lamellar ichthyosis is born, whole body is covered with a membrane, and that's why that baby is known as collodion baby, and that membrane is known as collodion membrane. So this is one important point to remember, that collodion membrane or collodion baby is seen in, it is seen in lamellar ichthyosis. Now what is the reason for these conditions? There are few defects, like in ichthyosis vulgaris, the reason is there is deficiency of filaggrin. So this protein is deficiency of filaggrin, while in X-linked there is deficiency of steroid sulfatase enzyme, while in lamellar ichthyosis there is deficiency of trans glutaminase 1. So these are the defects which you can remember in ichthyosis vulgaris, which is the most common type of ichthyosis. Here there is deficiency of filaggrin, while in X-linked there is deficiency of steroid sulfatase, and in lamellar ichthyosis trans glutaminase 1 is deficient. Now you can remember one important type which is known as Harlequin ichthyosis. Now this is autosomal recessive condition. This is a very rare condition. Here there is gene defect, and the gene which is defective is ABCA12 gene, adenosine triphosphate binding cascade gene. And in this type what happens, that the disease is very severe and the patient have very large scales over the body. Many of these patients at the time of birth they might die, and some might survive but they have poor prognosis. So because they have very large scales, these scales over chest especially look like armor, like the warriors when they go for war they wear armor. So armor like scales are seen. Next we will be discussing dermatitis, that is eczema. Now eczema or dermatitis can be broadly divided into two types. It can be exogenous or it can be endogenous. Let us first discuss exogenous types. The first example of exogenous is CID, that is contact irritant dermatitis. Now this irritant contact dermatitis generally develop on exposure to detergents or vegetables, and this is usually seen in housewives. So this is also known as housewives eczema, because these housewives they commonly deal with detergents, they wash clothes, they cut vegetables, so their exposed skin, like the finger skin, is exposed to these agents, and that's why they start developing dermatitis over their fingers. Okay, now they may occur on first exposure, so these lesions may occur on first exposure, and memory T cells are not formed. So these lesions are due to irritant nature of these chemicals, like the alkali which are present in detergents, they are irritant, and that's why on first exposure they might lead to this dermatitis. In contrast, the allergic dermatitis do not occur on first exposure. So second you can write down CAD, that is contact allergic dermatitis. Now, contact allergic dermatitis generally occur due to nickel. So, nickel is a very common allergen which is present in artificial jewelry or ornaments. So, these individuals who wear artificial jewelry, artificial necklace, artificial metallic wrist watches, or they hold these door handles which are having this nickel in it. So, wherever this metallic thing or nickel is present, and if they are allergic to it, they start developing this dermatitis. Now, nickel is not the only allergen. This is the most common allergen, but there are other allergens also like potassium dichromate, which is present in cement. So, the labors, they come in contact with cement, so they develop this dermatitis to potassium dichromate. Similarly, thurum, which is present in rubber. Cobalt chloride, which is present in tattoo dye. So, these are few allergens which can lead to this allergic dermatitis. Now, remember that this allergic dermatitis do not occur on first exposure. Here, memory T cells are formed. So, with the help of these points, you can very easily differentiate allergic dermatitis from irritant dermatitis. Now, to diagnose the cases of allergic dermatitis, you can do patch test. So, patch test is done for making the diagnosis of allergic dermatitis, that is allergic contact dermatitis, and patch test is very important. Already questions have been asked on patch test. So, you can write down few points about this patch test. 2 readings are taken. Second day and 4th day. 4th day reading is more specific. So, 48 hours, 96 hours. So, once this question was asked that patch test reading is done on 24, 48, 48, 96, 48, 72. So, remember 48, 96 hours. Now, what we do in patch test? In patch test, let us consider this is the individual and this is the back of the patient. Over the back of the patient, we take very small quantity of the allergen, the known allergen which we already know. So, we have a battery of allergens which are the known allergens which are the common culprits. So, what we do, we have very small aluminum caps. These are known as Finn chambers. Finn chambers. So, in these Finn chambers, we place a small quantity of the allergen and we place this Finn chamber over back of the patient. So, similarly, many Finn chambers are placed. They are numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they are sticked with the hypoallergenic tape over the back of the patient. Okay. Now, we ask the patient to come back on second day. We remove the hypoallergenic tape and take a reading, and then again we place it and send the patient back, and then we call the patient on the 4th day and again we take the reading. Sometimes patients show delayed reaction. So, this 4th day reading is more specific than the second day reading. And if you find any positive reaction at any of these sites, like you have placed various allergens at various sites, and if you find a positive reaction here, so whichever allergen which you have placed here, this confirms the diagnosis that the patient is allergic to this allergen. Okay, so we look for positive reaction there. Which this positive reaction can be in the form of erythema, edema, or vesiculation. Okay, so accordingly you can mark it. So this is how we do patch test. So this is the patch test. Generally these questions are asked. And third is ABCD. ABCD is airborne contact dermatitis. Airborne contact dermatitis. Now, airborne contact dermatitis generally occur due to plant, and the plant is Parthenium hysterophorus. Parthenium hysterophorus, also commonly known as Congress grass. So, Parthenium hysterophorus, also commonly known as Congress grass. Now, this is also a type of contact allergic dermatitis, because here also there is an allergen which is present in this plant which causes this dermatitis, and this culprit agent is Swissquiterpene lactone. So this is the culprit allergen which is present in this plant, that is Congress grass or Parthenium plant, which causes this dermatitis. Okay. So if you do patch test in these cases, so here also you can do patch test, and when you do patch test, it will come out positive for Swissquiterpene lactone. Now, because this is airborne contact dermatitis, and what happens here, that this plant, this Congress grass, it has a very small white flowers, and the pollens of this flower is spread via air. So wherever this air comes in contact with the patient who is allergic to it, they start developing dermatitis. Okay, so this is due to air which is carrying these pollens. So that's why if this is the patient, what you will find that this dermatitis occur over the exposed areas, because the exposed areas are more prone to develop this dermatitis, because that is more coming in contact with the direct this air. Okay, so this is very commonly seen in farmers and gardeners, because they are working in such environment in the farms and the gardens where these plants are present. So this is common in farmer and gardener, and in farmer and gardener where this dermatitis will be present over exposed areas like face, over neck, then V of the neck. Then if patient is wearing half shirt, then over the exposed areas. Okay, so hidden areas are spared and exposed areas are involved, like face, neck, V of the neck, exposed areas of the forearm. So that is the site where you will get this dermatitis. Next is endogenous type of eczema. Now there are so many examples of endogenous type of eczema, like nummular eczema, which is also known as discoid. In this type, coin shaped lesions are seen. Coin shaped lesions. Stasis dermatitis. This is usually seen in patients suffering from varicose veins, due to which dilatation of the vessels lead to increased permeability, and due to which there is a lot of edema over the gravitational sites like ankle. So this is also known as gravitational eczema, due to pooling of the blood. Cradle cap, this is seborrheic dermatitis. This is usually seen in infants. So when seborrheic dermatitis involves scalp in infants, this is known as cradle cap. Okay, so you will find these greasy scales over the scalp of infants. Why it is known as cradle cap? Because cradle is used by infants, and cap because the scalp is involved where we wear cap. Steatotic eczema. This is also known as winter eczema or eczema crackle. The triggering factor is cold, that's why this is known as steatotic eczema, but it is due to deficiency of lipid in the skin. Then atopic dermatitis. Now atopic dermatitis is important, and already questions have been asked, so let us discuss this in detail. Now in these patients who are suffering from atopic dermatitis, in their skin you will find there is increased transepidermal water loss. So there are various factors which lead to this atopic dermatitis. These can be genetic factors, these can be environmental factors, these can be immunological factors, these can be very dietary factors. So whatever the factor is, ultimately it leads to increased transepidermal water loss, and when there is increased transepidermal water loss, there is dryness or xerosis in the skin. Now once the skin becomes very dry, patient experiences itching, and because of this excessive itching they start scratching, and once they start scratching, this itching aggravates. So this is known as itch scratch itch cycle. So this is a vicious cycle which is going on in atopic dermatitis, that is known as itch scratch itch cycle, and due to which the patient keep on scratching and this itching keep on aggravating. So this is a very itchy condition and there are a lot of excoriation marks which are seen and there is excessive scratching. Now these two scientists, Hanifin and Rachka, they gave a diagnostic criteria for atopic dermatitis and after their name it is known as Hanifin and Rachka criteria. According to this, there are 4 major criteria and there are 23 minor criteria. If we talk about these 4 major criteria, the first major criteria is, as I told you, there is a lot of itching. So pruritus, that is excessive itching, is the first major criteria. Chronicity. So this condition is chronic, it is persisting for many months and years. So chronicity is the second criteria. Then there is a family history of atopy. Now history of atopy, that is can be in the form of asthma, hay fever, rhinitis, allergic conjunctivitis. So any history of atopy is associated in the family members. And there is a characteristic distribution of lesions. This characteristic distribution of lesions is, in adults, flexors are involved. Okay, so in adults mainly flexors are involved, like flexors of elbow, flexors of knee. In children, along with flexors, face involvement is seen. But in infants, along with flexors and face, what happens when they crawl, their extensors get involved. So extensor involvement can be seen in those infants and children who crawl, otherwise flexors are the common sites. Okay, so these are the common sites which are involved. So if you find these 4 clues in the question, then you should mark the answer as atopic dermatitis. Like recently this question was asked that patient present with itchy lichenified lesions over elbow, flexors of elbow and knee, mother having history of bronchial asthma, diagnosis. So history of atopy in the mother, that is bronchial asthma, patient is having very itchy lesions and they are present over flexural areas like flexors of elbow and knees, and because the lesions are lichenified, lichenification is a feature of chronic eczema. So this is persisting for a very long period, so this is chronicity. So all these features are present. If these are present, then you can mark answer as atopic dermatitis. Now if we talk about minor criteria, there are so many minor criteria, we are not going to discuss all 23, we are just going to write down few important ones, like patient can present with Denny-Morgan fold. This is extra skin fold which is seen in lower eyelid. Then white dermographism. See, dermographism is seen in arctic area, but white dermographism, that is due to vasoconstriction, is seen in atopic dermatitis. Patient may have pityriasis alba. Patient may have wool intolerance, then certain food intolerance. Then there are few eye changes which might be present in the form of conjunctivitis, anterior subcapsular cataract. Patient may have keratoconus. So these are various eye changes which might be present along with these other features. So these are the minor criteria in the patient of atopic dermatitis. If you get any 2 major and 2 minor criteria, that will help in diagnosing this condition according to Hanifin and Rachka criteria. Though the clinical features are suggestive of the disease and histology is generally not required, but if you do histology, if the patient comes in acute phase, so in the initial phase in any type of eczema, okay, so this is common for all eczema. In all eczema, if the patient comes in acute phase, you will get spongiosis. So in acute phase, you will get spongiosis. And if patient presents late in chronic phase, you will get acanthosis. So spongiosis, that is collection of fluid in stratum spinosum. Acanthosis is thickening of stratum spinosum. So as I already told you that acute eczema presents with oozing out lesions, oozing out. And because these are oozing out lesions, there is fluid coming out. If you do histology, you will get a lot of fluid in the stratum spinosum. Similarly, chronic eczema lesions are lichenified lesions. Lichenified lesions, that is thick lesions. Lichenification is characterized by hypertrophy, increased surface markings and pigmentary changes. So I told you the mnemonic HMP, so hypertrophic skin, thick skin, and because the skin is thick, if you do biopsy, you will get thickening of stratum spinosum, that is acanthosis. So in all the types of eczema, if it is acute, you will get oozing out lesions. On histology, it will show spongiosis. In all the types of eczema, if it is chronic, you will get lichenified lesions and it will show acanthosis on histology. Treatment again is common to all these different types of eczema. If the patient presents initially in the acute phase, you can treat with corticosteroids. If the lesion is localized, just topical corticosteroid is sufficient. If it is systemic, if it is progressively increasing and it is generalized, then you can give systemic steroids. In chronic condition, you cannot keep on giving steroids, so you can switch over to other agents, like you can give topical calcineurin inhibitors like tacrolimus, and systemic azathioprine. So these are various agents which can be used. Then you can note down few important facts here, like crisaborole and dupilumab. This is phosphodiesterase 4 inhibitor, and this acts against interleukin 4 and 13. This is approved for use in mild to moderate atopic dermatitis, while this is approved for moderate to severe atopic dermatitis. So these are two recent drugs which are used in atopic dermatitis, crisaborole and dupilumab. So after eczema or dermatitis, next is parasitology and infestations. The first heading here is migratory lesions of skin. So migratory lesions of skin can be seen in the form of cutaneous larva migrans, larva currens, and Calabar swellings. Cutaneous larva migrans is caused by filariform larva of animal hookworm. Remember, this is animal and not human. So once this question was asked and one of the option was human hookworm, so this is by animal hookworm. This is caused by Strongyloides sarcoralis, and Calabar swelling is caused by loa loa. How they clinically present? This is larva migrans. It will present with snake shaped or serpent shaped. So this is known as serpenginous lesions or track. This presents with urticarial lesions, so urticarial rash, and this presents with painless, non-pitting edema or swelling. The treatment for this condition is ivermectin with albendazole. Here this is treated with ivermectin and this is treated with DEC, which stands for diethyl carbamazine. Second condition is trypanosomiasis. In this condition, you just need to remember two important signs: winter bottom sign and Romana sign. Here you will get post cervical lymphadenopathy, while in Romana sign you will get periorbital. This is unilateral, so unilateral periorbital palpable edema. This is seen in early stage of West African trypanosomiasis, while this is seen in acute phase of or acute stage of American trypanosomiasis. So remember these two signs, Winterbottom and Romana sign. Third is Leishmaniasis, which can be further divided into three types. It can be cutaneous, mucocutaneous, or visceral, that is Kala-Azar. Cutaneous Leishmaniasis is further divided into two, Old World and New World. Old World is usually caused by Leishmania major, while this is caused by Mexicana. This leads to Delhi boil, which presents with ulcer with central crusting. Now this is something which we have already read. I told you that central clearing is feature of tinea, central scarring is feature of lupus vulgaris, and central crusting is feature of leishmaniasis. Okay, so this is central crusting which is seen here. Well, this leads to Chicrello ulcer, which is also known as gum harvesters ulcer. So Chicrello ulcer is caused by Leishmania mexicana. Mucocutaneous type, as it is very obvious from the name itself, here skin as well as mucosa is involved, which lead to mutilation. So these mutilating lesions are seen, and these mutilating lesions are known as spondia. So they might ask you about this. And finally, the patients who are suffering from visceral leishmaniasis, if sometimes they are giving inadequate treatment, so if proper treatment is not given to them, later on these patients can develop post Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis. So when the patient who is suffering from Kala-Azar develops inadequate treatment, so what happens? They might lead to post Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis, and post Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis we have already discussed while discussing pigmentary disorders, and there I told you that post Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis is one of the differential diagnoses for LL type of leprosy. Why? Because in both these conditions, that is LL type of leprosy and post Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis, in both these conditions hypopigmented lesions are seen over trunk, nodular lesions are seen over face, and these patients may be from endemic area like Bihar. So how you are going to differentiate? By the past history of fever, because this is visceral leishmaniasis, there will be past history of fever present here, while in LL type of leprosy it will be absent. Investigation, you might get LD bodies, which is Leishmania Donovan bodies. So remember, Donovan bodies are seen in Donovanosis, STI, while LD bodies, Leishmania Donovan bodies are seen in Leishmaniasis. So remember D for D, Donovan, Donovanosis. Okay, LD, that is Leishmania Donovan body. So L in Leishmaniasis. Next is infestations. In infestations, we will be discussing pediculosis, This infestation with lice is known as pediculosis. Okay, so there is infestation of lice, and this lice can be head lice, it can be body lice, or it can be pubic lice. When there is head lice infestation, we call it pediculosis capitis. Body lice infestation, that is pediculosis corporis. Another name is vagabond disease, and this is Thyrus pubis. Now, how these patients clinically present? So, when there is head lice infestation, this is generally seen in females or girl child, and these patients may present with regional lymphadenopathy like cervical lymphadenopathy. So, if a girl child presents with lymphadenopathy, you should suspect pediculosis capitis, and there will be lot of itching over scalp. Okay. Now, when the patient is infested with body lice, what happens? Whole body is having lot of excoriation marks because all the time patient is scratching his skin. So, this is known as morbus irrorum. Morbus means disease, irrorum is for excoriation. So, this is disease of excoriation, whole body have excoriation marks. And pubic lice, in this condition you will get macula cerulea. Cerulo means blue and macula means macule. So, a bluish macule is seen at the site of pubic lice bite. So, where this pubic lice bites, a bluish macule is formed. If the patient comes with this lymphadenopathy and itching over scalp and you diagnose as a case of pediculosis capitis, then the treatment given is permethrin. So, ask the patient to apply permethrin 1%. For pediculosis corporis, the treatment is disinfection of clothes and application of permethrin 1%. Okay. Now, let us consider that this question is asked in your exam and they ask you that what is the treatment for pediculosis corporis, and first option is disinfection of clothes, second is application of permethrin, and both is not there. Then which one you will choose? Because this is body lice, body have lice. So, if you apply permethrin, all the lice will die. So, is it permethrin the answer? No. Permethrin is not the answer because these lice, they do not live over the body. Where they live? They live in the creases of the clothes. So, majority of the lice are lying in the creases of the clothes, and that's why disinfection of clothes is very important in these patients. And if both are given in separate option, choose disinfection of clothes. Then why we are applying permethrin? We are applying permethrin to target only those lice which are still feeding over the body, which are there over the body, which are very few lice. So, to target them, we apply permethrin, but the majority of them are in the creases of the clothes. So, that's why disinfection of clothes is most important. Now, remember that this pubic lice is included in STI. So, this infestation can get sexually transmitted. So, that's why if there is history of contact, then treatment of contact is also important. So, treatment of contact is done if there is history of contact, because this is sexually transmitted infection. Ask the patient to apply permethrin 1%. So, permethrin 1% application is done. You can also ask the patient to go for shaving of pubic hair, though this is not compulsory. Now, sometimes they might ask you that if a patient presents with infestation of eyelashes, then these are which mite? Okay. So, head lice infest head, body lice infest body, and pubic lice infest pubic area. But if the patient is having infestation of eyelashes, these are which lice? These are head lice which come down, or body lice, or pubic lice which go up. Yes, so infestation of eyelashes is done by, you can note down, by pubic lice. So, remember, head lice do not come down, pubic lice go up and infest eyelashes. So, if the patient is suffering from eyelashes infestation, then you should treat for pubic lice. Okay. And this is the bitter truth of life, isn't it? Nobody wants to come down, everyone wants to rise. Okay. So, this is a very simple mnemonic to remember, that head lice do not come down, pubic lice go up and they rise and infest the eyelashes. Next is scabies. Scabies is caused by Sarcoptes scabi mite, and the one which infests humans is known as Ver hominis. So, this is the mite which causes scabies. There is an incubation period of 4 weeks, and that is the reason why when the patient comes to us, we ask all the family members to apply permethrin. Okay. So, there is an incubation period. It is not necessary that all the patient will come together. Sometimes they present late as well. Okay. So, all the family members have to apply permethrin when the patient presents. Now clinically, there are different types of lesions which can be seen in scabies. Like the most characteristic lesion is burrows. So burrows are the spatial lesions of scabies. So these are what? These are spatial or the most characteristic lesions. These are slightly S-shaped, so they are linear or serpentinous. They are formed in stratum corneum. So they are formed by this mite in the topmost dead layer, that is stratum corneum, and they are usually seen in the web spaces. Then other than burrows, you can see other lesions also, like you might get papules, nodules, vesicles. All these lesions, see, burrows are formed by the itch mite, but all these papules, vesicles, nodules, they are formed due to hypersensitivity to this mite, that is itch mite or Sarcoptes mite. So remember that if you want to see these mites, you need to take scraping from where? From burrows, because in the burrows you might find mites, but in papules, nodules, vesicles, these are due to hypersensitivity reaction. So that's why here mites are not present, only inflammatory cells are present. Now these nodules are generally seen over scrotum, and that is the reason why nodular scabies is the name given for genital scabies. Similarly, these vesicular lesions are seen over palm and sole, and this is seen in infants. So this is also known as infantile scabies. So in patients who are suffering from infantile scabies, that is the scabies in infants, their palm and sole might get involved and you might find vesicles over palm and sole. If scrotum is involved in adults, then the nodular lesions are seen. Papules can be seen in normal scabies as well, and burrows are the most characteristic and spatial lesions. Okay. Then other than these, you can also get excoriations, because this is a very itchy condition. So patient keep on excoriating the lesions and these excoriation marks might be present. If you want to confirm your diagnosis, you should clinically look for these 4 things. First, itching. So this is a very itchy condition, so lot of itching which is more at night. So this is known as nocturnal pruritus. Then family history is positive, that means other family members are also suffering from the disease. Look for presence of burrows, because burrows, if you find them, these are the most characteristic lesions, so this will confirm your diagnosis. So these burrows should be looked for. And look for the characteristic distribution of lesions, because there are few specific sites which are involved, like in adults, face, palm, sole are spared, while in infants, face, palm, sole is involved. So remember that face, palm and sole are spared in adults, and that is the reason why we ask the patient suffering from scabies to apply permethrin below neck, because face is spared. But in infants you have to apply over face as well. Okay, so remember that face, palm and sole is generally spared. One more point to remember is circle of Hebra. So this is also based on distribution of lesions, circle of Hebra. And this is seen in scabies. Okay, so already these 2 questions have been asked. The circle of Hebra is seen in, answer is scabies. It is based on distribution of lesion. Let us try to understand this. If this is your patient who is suffering from scabies, you will find that the common sites which are involved in scabies are web spaces. So these are the sites, web spaces. Then genital areas are involved, so groin. Periumbilical area is involved, so periumbilical area. Then flexors are involved, like flexors of wrist, flexors of elbow, flexors of axilla, sometimes around areola. So these are the common sites which are involved in scabies. Okay, so common sites involved are web spaces, groin, periumbilical area, periareolar area, and flexors of wrist, elbow and axilla. So when this scientist Hebra noticed these areas which are involved in scabies, he found this distribution, and after his name this is known as circle of Hebra. So you can see it is following a circle. So this is known as circle of Hebra. Okay, so this is based on distribution of lesion, and this is seen in scabies. Though the diagnosis is clinical and based on these features you can very easily diagnose, but still if you want to prepare 10% KOH mount, you can prepare from the scrapping which is taken from the burrows, and you will find either the mite or the egg or the fecal palate of this mite, which is known as Skybella. Treatment. Now, treatment of scabies is done with permethrin. 5% permethrin is used, and this is the drug of choice. There are other topical agents also. So, permethrin is a topical agent. Other topical agents which are used in scabies are benzyl benzoate. So, benzyl benzoate 25%, GBSC gamma benzene hexachloride 1%, and crotameton 10%. So, all these are the topical agents which are used in scabies. Among them, permethrin is the drug of choice which acts on sodium channels. Benzyl benzoate is having a disadvantage, that is, it requires multiple applications, while permethrin requires only single application. Then GBSC also have a disadvantage because this is a neurotoxin, and because it is a neurotoxin, it can precipitate GTCS. So that's why this drug is contraindicated during pregnancy, in young children, like children less than 2 years, and also in patients who are having history of epilepsy. And crotameton has one advantage, and that advantage is it is antipruritic. And because it is antipruritic, it reduces itching. Other than these topical agents, you can use systemic agents. The systemic agents which are commonly used are ivermectin. So this is the only systemic agent which is effective. This is ivermectin. The dose of ivermectin is 200 microgram per kg body weight. If they ask you in milligram, then it is 0.2 milligram per kg body weight. So ivermectin, it acts on glutamate gated chloride channels, which leads to hyperpolarization due to chloride influx, leading to paralysis of this mite. So because the mechanism of action is by paralysis of the mite, it do not act on egg. Similarly, permethrin also don't act on egg. Okay, so sometimes what happens when the disease is very severe, like Norwegian scabies, which is the most severe type of scabies, we require multiple applications of permethrin and at least 2 doses of ivermectin. Why? Because first dose is given which take care of the mite, and the eggs which are present at this point when the first dose was given, they hatch within a period of 2 weeks, because there is incubation period of 4 weeks. So after mid cycle, that is after 2 weeks, we repeat the dose of ivermectin. So remember that in Norwegian, which is also known as crusted scabies, because there are crusted lesions which are seen. So Norwegian or crusted scabies, which is the most severe type of scabies, here millions of mites are seen, millions of mite. See, normally in a patient who is suffering from normal scabies, 10 to 15 mites per person are present. So 10 to 15 mites per person are present normally, but in Norwegian scabies, their number keep on increasing and they become millions of mites. But remember that here, when the mites are less, the pruritus is more, but here the pruritus is less. So pruritus decreases, so less itchy. And this is generally seen in bedridden or immunocompromised patients, like the patients who are suffering from leprosy. Because of decreased sensations, there is sensory loss, so that's why they don't feel any pruritus or these itching. Then in patients who are bedridden or psychiatric patients who are not maintaining proper hygiene, or immunocompromised patients, so in these patients this type of scabies develops. Now as I told you, the treatment here is 2 doses of ivermectin, 2 weeks apart, and normally in scabies we give permethrin single dose, but here permethrin 5%, multiple doses are required. So multiple applications. Let us write down few important facts here. In one of the exams, this question was asked about Cutis marmorata. So remember that Cutis marmorata is bluish reticulate pattern seen in neonates, which is a physiological. So it is a bluish reticulate pattern seen in neonates, which is a physiological response to cold. So it is what? It is a physiological response to cold. Okay. So remember that this is generally seen in neonates, and these neonates present with this reticulate pattern over their skin, and this is a physiological response to cold. So if you warm this patient, okay, so this disappears. Okay, so this disappears on rewarming. Now this is a normal physiological response to cold which is seen in neonates, but sometimes when the patient's skin is exposed to cold climate for a longer period, patient can develop certain conditions. These are known as chilblain or pernio, or if it persists for a very long period, this cold exposure, then patient can develop frostbite. So remember, in chilblain or perniosis, this usually develops during winters or after prolonged cold exposure. Like the maids or washers, in winters they keep on washing clothes for a longer period of the time and their feet are wet in cold water, so they might develop these lesions of chilblains over their feet. Okay, so these are itchy, red, sometimes these swellings might be seen, so itchy red lesions or swellings might be present. While frostbite is seen in these travelers or the persons who are exposed to ice or water, cold water for a prolonged period, and here initially the lesions are red, but gradually they become pale. So these are few conditions which might arise due to cold exposure, but there is one condition which might arise due to excessive hot exposure, and that condition is erythema ab agne. Now this is very common nowadays because of the teenagers who keep on playing video games on their laptop, and where they keep this laptop over their lap. So there is hot air which is coming out of the laptop, and their lap skin, their thigh skin is under constant exposure to this hot air. So they start developing these lesions over their thighs. Okay, so this is erythema ab agne. So this is again erythema. So this is red. So this is reddish or erythematous. This is also reticulate. So reticulate pattern over skin which is under constant exposure to heat. So if the skin is under constant exposure to heat, there might develop this erythematous reticulate pattern. This is known as erythema ab agne. Then there is a condition known as dermatitis artifacta. See, normally we have discussed dermatitis or eczema, okay, but dermatitis artifacta, all of you know, is artificial. So this is not a true dermatitis, this is artificial dermatitis. Okay, so this is something which is produced by the patients themselves. Okay, so these are what? These are self-inflicted injuries. So what is dermatitis artifacta? You can write down, these are self-inflicted injuries which do not fit into any disease pattern. So many a times it might appear that these are few lesions of certain disease, but they do not fit into any disease pattern. So then you have to suspect dermatitis artifacta. Okay, this is very commonly seen in hysteria patients or prisoners. Okay, so let us consider you are a medical officer posted in central jail. Okay, and a prisoner comes to you with self-inflicted injuries. Okay, and he is not telling you that he has done this himself. Okay, and you are also not a dermatologist, so you are also in a dilemma whether this is some new kind of disease or what. So What you can do a very simple test. You can take any ointment, okay, so you can take any ointment and add fluorescent dye in it, okay, and give it to the patient. Ask the patient to apply over these lesions and come back over after 2 days, okay. Then after 2 days you take Woods lamp and examine this lesion, and you will find that there is no fluorescence, because patient is not applying your this cream or ointment which you have given, because patient want to get hospitalized, okay. And so sometimes these prisoners can do this to get hospitalized, and they self-inflict injuries and they come to you. So if you find any such lesion which looks like a self-inflicted injuries and they do not fit into any disease pattern, and the patient is hysteria or psychiatric patient or a prisoner who have intention to get hospitalized, then you should suspect dermatitis artifacta. So this is self-inflicted injuries. Let us see images from this group. So here you can see this is a patient suffering from pyoderma gangrenosum. As I told you, pyoderma gangrenosum is a type of neutrophilic dermatosis where ulcers with undermined edges are seen. So ulcer with undermined edges is seen, and this is the diagnosis of exclusion. Generally, you have to exclude all the common causes of ulcers in lower leg, like venous ulcer, arterial ulcer, any bacterial, viral, mycobacterial or tubercular ulcer. So if nothing is found, then you should suspect pyoderma gangrenosum, and in these patients many a times you will find associated some systemic disease like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease or rheumatoid arthritis or SLE. So this is pyoderma gangrenosum. When you will do the biopsy, you will get deep dermal neutrophilic infiltrate. Then contact dermatitis, I already told you, this is due to contact to certain things, like many a times patient is wearing rubber sleepers, okay, and wherever this rubber sleeper comes in contact with the skin, due to that rubber, patient may develop dermatitis to this. So that's why you can see the lesions are only present over this site, that is where the sleepers comes in contact with the skin, okay. So patient is having dermatitis over this area, okay. So this is contact dermatitis. Similarly, patients who are suffering from hand dermatitis, which is generally due to detergents or vegetables, they develop this dry eczema over their fingers. Then irritant contact dermatitis is due to certain irritant nature, like when you will whenever alkali or acidic chemical comes in contact with the skin, it causes irritation and causes irritant dermatitis, okay. And many a times it might present with acute lesions like these exudative lesions, and when it is very severe, sometimes you might get bulla formation or vesicle formation. Then housewife eczema, I already told you, this is a chronic eczema where patient develop this dermatitis continuously due to exposure to the detergents. These palm as well as the bottom of the hand might get involved. Initially the lesions will be oozing out, gradually you will find thickened lesions over these sites. Allergic dermatitis to cement, as I told you, potassium dichromate is the culprit, and when the patient comes in contact with that cement, that potassium dichromate is the one which causes this dermatitis over the hands or palm. Then Parthenium hysterophorus, I told you, this is the plant which causes airborne contact dermatitis, and this is also known as Congress grass. If you closely see this plant, you will find small white flowers, which is the culprit, and the culprit chemical or the allergen which is present in this plant is known as sequestopene lactone. Then ABCD, I told you, airborne contact dermatitis. Airborne contact dermatitis is generally occur over exposed areas, and that is the reason you can see that this area which was hidden under the shirt or the t-shirt is spared, but the exposed area like neck, V of the neck and the face gets involved. Then I told you patch testing. In patch testing, we have these fin chambers which we place over the back of the patient with a small quantity of the allergen. We number them. We know we have placed which allergen at which site, and then we stick it with hypoallergenic tape. Okay, so if the patient comes out, like if you have placed nickel here on number 5, and if the patient shows a positive reaction here at number 5, then obviously the patient is allergic to nickel. You can ask the patient that avoid anything which is having nickel, like metallic jewelry or metallic things, metallic wrist bands or wrist watches. Okay, so here you can see when we remove the hypoallergenic tape, you will find positive reactions, like you have found positive reaction here, positive reaction here, positive reaction here, a small positive here, a small positive here. So you can just label it that which allergen was placed here, and then you can tell the patient and you can give the report. Reading, I already told you, 48 and 96 hours. Then sometimes if there is no reaction, we call it negative. If there is irritation as soon as you apply, there is redness, then it is irritation reaction. If you are unable to find out whether it is positive or negative, you can call it equivocal. If there is only erythema, we call it weak positive. If there is edema also, we call it strong positive. And if there is vesiculation, it is extremely reactive or extremely positive. In some books or in some options you might get prick test. So remember, the prick test is having a very limited value, and this is not the investigation of choice for these dermatitis patient, and this is only used to diagnose hay fever allergy, that is the allergy to the house dust mite or the grass or the pollens, but this is not very specific and it has a limited value. Then stasis dermatitis, as I told you, the patients who are suffering from varicose veins, they start developing dermatitis over their lower leg, generally around ankle or foot. Then dyshydrotic eczema. Dyshydrotic eczema is another name for steatotic eczema. Here you can see these oozing out lesions which are present. Then discoid eczema, I told you, here coin shaped lesions are seen, so you can see round coin like lesions are present. Then cradle cap are the greasy lesions which are seen in infants over their scalp, so these are the greasy lesions of seborrheic dermatitis seen in infants. Then atopic dermatitis, I told you that there is flexural involvement, extensor involvement, and in children face involvement. So you can see face involvement is there. Initially oozing out lesions are present, skin becomes very dry, and due to dryness these cracks are present. So through these cracks you will find watery discharges coming out, and these cracks are due to the dry skin. So a lot of moisturizer is required. If there is edema and erythema, then steroids are also required, and because of these cracks and the breach in the skin, there is chances of secondary infection. So if secondary infection occurs, it is generally bacterial, generally caused by Staph aureus, but sometimes it can be viral also, generally caused by herpes simplex virus. And when there is viral infection, we call it eczema herpeticum, I told you. Here again you can see flexural areas are involved and these lichenified lesions are present. So thick dry skin with increased markings, okay, and in comparison to the normal skin the color is also changed. So these are the lichenified lesions which are present over flexors of the knee. Then similarly erythematous oozing out lesions over the face. Other areas can also get involved. So these are the patients of atopic dermatitis. Then Denny-Morgan fold, I told you, it is extra skin fold which is seen in lower eyelid. So you can see this Denny-Morgan fold, this is the extra skin fold in lower eyelid. Then there is a condition known as Netherton syndrome, okay, Netherton syndrome. And why we are discussing it here? Because this is one condition which is associated with atopic dermatitis, ichthyosis. The type of ichthyosis which is associated is ichthyosis linearis circumflexa and trichorexis invaginata. This is hair shaft disorder. Invaginata term itself is suggestive. What happens? There is defect in the hair shaft. So let us consider this is the hair follicle. Now due to defect in the hair shaft, let's say here is the defect, what will happen? The lower portion of the hair follicle will invaginate into the upper portion of the hair follicle, and due to this invagination a nodular swelling is seen here. So this nodular swelling is due to invagination of the lower portion into the upper portion. So this is known as invaginata, and due to this it appears like a node, and node is seen in bamboos. So this is also known as bamboo hair. So these are the points which you need to remember in Netherton syndrome, that is, it is associated with atopic dermatitis, ichthyosis, if you can remember the name well and good, otherwise simply remember ichthyosis, and trichorexis invaginata, which is also known as bamboo hair. So AIB. Nowadays stand-up comedy is very famous, and there is one famous stand-up comedy name, that is AIB. You can remember with this: atopic dermatitis, ichthyosis and bamboo hair. Then because we are discussing this hair shaft disorder, let us discuss about one more condition, that is Menkes disease. This is X-linked recessive condition, and here what happens, there is mutation in the gene coding for copper transport protein, that is ATP7A. This is leading to copper deficiency. So remember, this disease is due to copper deficiency, and due to which the hair becomes very kinky. So kinky hairs are seen, growth failure is seen, nervous system deterioration is seen, and what happens, the hairs are very kinky. Why they are kinky? Because what happens, there is twisting of the hair follicle, okay. So there is twisting of the hair follicle which occur in this deficiency, and due to twisting what happens, you will find that wherever there is a twist, that portion appears thin and the remaining portion appear thick, like there is a twisted hair here, So this is a thin portion while this is a slightly broad portion. Okay, so it gives a beaded appearance as if a bead is present here, then a bead is present here. So this is node, this is internode, then there is node, then there is internode. So this appears like beaded hair follicle, but this is not a true bead, this is a pseudo bead because these are not the real beads, these are due to twisting. So this is also known as pillae torti. So pillae torti or kinky hair are associated with Menkes disease, and this is due to copper deficiency. Then dermatitis artifacta, I told you dermatitis artifacta are self-inflicted injuries. Okay, so they might be present over any part of the body, but here over the face the patient have excoriated the lesions, and that's why these excoriation marks are present. So whenever you will find dermatitis artifacta, you will get these excoriation marks. Okay, they might be linear excoriation marks, or at places there might be excoriation marks. Then Wiskott-Eldridge syndrome, why we are discussing it here? Because this is one syndrome which is associated with dermatitis or eczema. Okay, so remember that this is X-linked recessive condition. You might have read about this condition in pediatrics also. So you will get these eczematous lesions, and along with eczema it is associated with thrombocytopenia and immunodeficiency, and because of thrombocytopenia patient develops bloody diarrhea. Okay, and there will be thrombocytopenia, that is low platelet count. Then infestation, we have already discussed. There are various lice, like you can see this is head lice, then this is 3D image of Sarcoptes mite. You can very easily identify this, 2 pairs of leg in the front, 2 pairs at the back. Then this is the common sites which are involved in scabies. As I told you, web spaces are involved, axilla is involved, groin is involved, periumbilical area is involved, wrist is involved, sometimes elbow and axilla is involved, and of course web spaces are involved. So this forms a circle. Here you can see this is the topmost layer, that is stratum corneum. So this is stratum corneum, and in stratum corneum this might have formed these burrows. In the burrows it might lay egg. So if you take the scrapping and see it under a microscope, you might find eggs, the mite or the fecal pellets. This is the web space of a patient suffering from scabies, and you will find these papular lesions or burrows or sometimes vesicular lesions. So any type of lesions might be present. Generally the characteristic lesions are burrows. Then I told you over scrotum the lesions are nodular, and that's why genital scabies is also known as nodular scabies. So here you will get nodules. Nodules are larger. So larger lesions, solid large lesions might be present. Then scabies when develops, it might lead to eczematization, that is at the lesions there might be eczema formation. Okay, so eczematization may also occur. So sometimes such scabies hand might be seen where eczema is developing. Okay, when you see, you will find that the patient was actually suffering from scabies and then developed this eczematization of the lesions. Burrows are the characteristic lesions, and they are linear or slightly S-shaped, like you can see here. This is linear or S-shaped burrow. Leishmaniasis, I told you, leishmaniasis, if we talk about post-Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis, I told you these patients present with nodular lesions over face. So you can see these nodular lesions over face, and that is the reason why we sometimes get confused with leprosy, because in leprosy also such nodular lesions might be present. Okay, you can see here also this is appearing as if there is a saddle nose. So that's why this gives appearance very similar to leprosy, but you need to differentiate from leprosy. I have already given you the differentiating features. Then cutaneous larva migrans, I already told you that this cutaneous larva migrans is filariform larva of animal hookworm which is present beneath the skin, and because this is the larva, this gives a linear or a serpentinous track. Okay, so such appearance is seen, which is very simple to diagnose, and this is known as serpentinous. Why? Because it is serpent like. So serpentinous track is seen, cutaneous larva migrans. Then ichthyosis, I already told you, ichthyosis present with fish-like scales. So you can see severe dryness of the skin, fish-like scales are present, and this is the most common type of ichthyosis, that is ichthyosis vulgaris. X-linked ichthyosis also present with similar lesions, but these lesions might be present over, like you can see lot of dryness. This is more over the extensors, but over flexors also involved. Like you can see here, this is the abdomen of the patient. Here also the lesions are present. While lamellar ichthyosis is more severe type, where larger scales are seen, more dryness is seen. You can see whole skin is dried and large fish-like scales are present. When this child was born, whole body was covered with membrane. Okay, so as the child increases in age, the size and the dryness also increases. So you can see smaller dry skin might be present, then larger scales and more dryness, more stretching of the skin, and due to scratching sometimes ectropion might be present. So all these are the features which might develop in lamellar ichthyosis. When the child was born, whole body was covered with a membrane. So this membrane which is covering the whole body, this membrane is known as, so this thick parchment like membrane might be present, this is known as collodion membrane, and such baby is known as collodion baby. Then I told you there is one very severe type, most severe type of ichthyosis, which is due to gene defect, ABCA12 gene. This is also autosomal recessive condition, and here this Harlequin baby is seen. If you look at the chest of the patient, large scales are present over the chest. Okay, so large scales, and these are known as armor-like scales. If you have seen the warriors, they wear large armors over their chest. So such armor-like scales might be present. Many of these patients die, but some might survive, and they have poor prognosis. So urticaria, I already told you, it is due to hyperactivity of the mast cells, and mast cells when release histamine, there is triple response which is seen. Triple response, that is so there is erythema, followed by flare, followed by wheals. So these wheals are seen, these elevated red lesions are seen, and they are very transient lesions. So these transient lesions are seen which last for less than 24 hours. So these are the wheals or the characteristic lesions of urticaria. Then urticaria, wherever you scratch the skin, there these lesions can develop, like patient have scratched here, and there the triple response has occurred leading to these elevated lesions. So whatever you draw over the skin, that becomes visible. Like if you draw A, you will find this A written over the skin. Okay, so this is known as dermographism or dermatographism. Dermo means skin, graphism means to write. So you can see wherever the patient scratches, there you can see these lesions. Here if you write anything, you write A, L, then that becomes visible. So whatever you write becomes visible. Now these are arcuate or polycyclic lesions. It is not necessary every time around the linear lesions. You might get arcuate or polycyclic lesions in urticaria. Now there are different types of urticaria. One of them is cholinergic urticaria, and this cholinergic urticaria is due to excessive sweating. Okay, so whenever patient goes for gym, or whenever goes in outside in the sun, so sweating occurs, and due to this sweating this get precipitated. Okay, and in this condition again the same thing, that is the histamine rises in the concentration, and this can be experimentally induced by the exercise. Okay, but the important point to remember here is in cholinergic urticaria the lesions are very small, so you can see small lesions are present. Then cutaneous mastocytosis, we have already discussed. Here the number of mast cells increases. This is generally seen in children over trunk, and there is c-KIT gene mutation in urticaria pigmentosa, and these dark colored lesions, if they are rubbed, they produce, because of release of histamine, they produce erythema and sometimes vesiculation. So that is known as Darrier sign. So Darrier sign is seen in cutaneous mastocytosis, that is urticaria pigmentosa. Now remember that Darrier sign is seen in urticaria pigmentosa, but there are few other conditions where you might get Darrier sign, like in histiocytosis, leukemia, and xanthogranuloma. These are the wheals. I already told you, wheals are the transient which persist for less than 24 hours, and if they are persisting for more than 24 hours, then you should suspect articarial vasculitis. Okay, so sometimes these lesions can develop due to vasculitis also, but if it is simple urticaria, it will be transient, and this is due to dermal involvement. If there is subcutaneous level involvement, it will lead to angioedema. Like you can see this is due to angioedema. The swelling is present, but there is no urticaria, there is no itching. These are non-itchy. Okay, so these are non-itchy. They can be painful. They are deeper in the subcutaneous layer. This is also known as Quincke's edema. Okay. Now there is one more condition, that is hereditary angioedema. So hereditary angioedema, remember that here there is no urticaria. Okay, so there is no urticaria. This is hereditary angioedema. There is only angioedema, as the name itself is suggestive. Okay, this is familiar and this is sudden. So sudden patient will present with angioedema, lot of swelling, and sometimes it can be in the subglottis area, which can lead to a blockage of the airway. So this can be sometimes life threatening. Okay, so what happens here, there is C1 esterase deficiency. Okay, so this C1 esterase inhibitor protein, what it does, it inhibits kinin. So when there is C1 esterase deficiency, the kinin level increases. Okay, so what happens here, there is activation of the factor 12, that is Hagman factor, which consumes this inhibitor, that is C1 esterase inhibitor protein, and this leads to increased level of kinin, and this causes angioedema. Okay, so you will find increased kinin and low complement levels. Now photophysics we have already discussed, especially the important point which is asked in the exam is about the UV range. If you recall, while discussing pigmentary disorders, I told you UV A, B, C and then A2, A1. So you can see AC, that is 200 to 290, and because this is cut by the ozone layer, it is not present in the sunlight which reaches earth. Then UVB, this is sunburn spectrum, that is 290 to 320, and only 5% is present in the sunlight which reaches earth. Remaining 95% is UVA, that is 320 to 400, which is further divided into A2 and A1, that is 320 to 340 and 340 to 400. Then there are other spectrums also other than UV spectrum, visible spectrum, infrared spectrum. Okay, so these also if you want you can remember, but UV is important. Then sometimes they ask you about morbilliform rash. Okay, so morbilliform rash are very small, they are flat macules. Okay, so neither raised nor depressed, less than 0.5 centimeter in size. So these are red or rose colored macules. Sometimes they are slightly elevated. If they are elevated, we call them maculopapular eruptions. So these are macular or maculopapular eruption, and generally they occur after viral infection. So patient have viral infection due to which he develops viral fever, and then after some time these rashes start developing. Okay, so morbilliform rashes are generally associated with viral infection. So patient will have initially prodromal symptoms in the form of fever and malaise, and after fever and malaise this morbilliform rash might appear. Okay, so this might be associated with various virus conditions like measles, rubella, then scarlet fever, parvovirus B19 infection, then enterovirus, adenovirus, human herpes virus 6. Okay, so sometimes they ask you about morbilliform rash. So this is morbilliform rash, they are very small, sometimes they might be larger also, that is maculopapular. Then oral hairy leukoplakia, sometimes we get confused with oral candidiasis. So remember, oral candidiasis, when rubbed it can be detached, while this cannot be detached. That is due to candidiasis, this is due to Epstein-Barr virus infection. Okay, and this is generally seen on the side of the tongue. Okay, so on the side of the tongue you will find this irregular white patch, and this is the lesion of oral hairy leukoplakia. Like you can see here, irregular white patch. Generally it is present on the side of the tongue. Pellagra you might have read in biochemistry also. So pellagra is due to niacin deficiency, and it is characterized by 4 Ds. What are the 4 Ds? Diarrhea, dementia, dermatitis and death. Now this dermatitis, that is the inflammation of the skin which occurs, this is generally over the photo-exposed areas. So this is generally over the photo-exposed areas. That's why you can see dermatitis over the face, then neck area, and because the neck area is involved, it gives a characteristic appearance. It looks like a castle necklace. So this necklace appearance is seen. So you can see this dermatitis present over the neck area. So castle necklace appearance might be present. Then there is a condition which is very rare known as aplasia cutis, where there is absence of skin. Okay, so there might be a patch which is deficient of skin. Okay, so like this. So there is deficient skin patch. This is congenital condition and sometimes might be present. Generally it is present over scalp. Then xeroderma pigmentosa we have already discussed. This is DNA repair defect, nucleotide excision repair defect, and in these patients what happen, at photo exposed sites like face you will get lot of freckles. So you can see face is full of freckles, and soon they start developing squamous cell carcinoma. So malignant changes might also develop. So this is what, this is xeroderma pigmentosa. Then Coxsackie virus A16 is the causative agent for hand, foot, mouth disease. And this condition is contagious condition which is usually seen in young individuals. So these young children, they might develop these sore lesions or ulcers. So they develop sores or ulcers over hand, foot, like you can see here, foot and mouth, that is oral mucosa. So if you find these sores or ulcers over hand, foot, mouth which are contagious, and this is due to again virus, that is Coxsackie virus A19, then this is hand, foot, mouth disease. Then acrodermatitis entropathica, this also we have discussed. This is due to zinc deficiency, and sometimes we need to give lifelong zinc supplement, which is 1 to 3 mg, or some books mention 2 to 3 mg per kg oral zinc has to be given, and the sites are very specific. Entropathica, you can remember diarrhea, so it is associated with diarrhea, and acro means acral parts. So lesions are present over hand, feet, perioral and diaper areas. So here you can see diaper areas are involved. So this erythematous scaly lesion might be present, and this is due to zinc deficiency. So we give zinc to these patients. So dermatitis is present over these areas, diarrhea might be present, and these patients may develop hair loss also. So that is non-scarring type of alopecia. Non-scarring type of alopecia. Then there is a condition known as LSC, that is lichen simplex chronicus. This lichen simplex chronicus is also known as neurodermatitis. Neurodermatitis. Because this dermatitis have origin in brain. Why? Because this is not some skin condition. Actually what happens, patient which are type A personality, or they have very much anxiety or depression, they keep on scratching at one particular site, and due to this constant scratching at that area, these thickened lesions might start developing, these lichenified lesions might start developing, like over the shin of the tibia or sometimes nape of the neck. Okay, so what happens, this is due to constant scratching. Okay, so this is not a disease in the skin, actually this is the psychiatric problem where the patient have tendency to scratch at one particular site, and that's why these lesions develop. So that's why it is known as neurodermatitis. Then cutis marmorata, as I told you, this reticulate pigmentation or pattern which is seen in neonates as a physiological response to cold. So this completes dermatology. I have a YouTube channel, so you can just subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are various videos, you can have a look to these videos. I have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. You can join that group and you can ask your doubts there. This is a very famous saying in Sanskrit. I don't know whether you will understand or not, but this is very relevant for all the students. And the saying is that Kak cheshta bako dhyanam swan nidra tadevcha swalpahari greh tagi vidyarthi panch lakshadam. So every student have these 5 special qualities, and if you have these 5 qualities, no one can stop you from achieving the success or a good rank in your case. Okay, so what are these 5 good qualities? So Kak cheshta, perseverance like a crow. Okay, so you might have heard that story long ago. There was a thirsty crow, so that crow has the perseverance to drink that water, and for that he did everything. He picked up each and every pebble and kept on putting in that pot so that the water level rises, and then he drank the water. So that is the kind of perseverance which you require for your studies. Every minute, every hour is important, and you have to devote it for your studies. Then bako dhyanam. Now while you are devoting that time, you have to concentrate. So you have to concentrate like a crane. Like a crane, she keeps on standing on one foot and keep on waiting for that opportunity, that fish, and when it comes, it grabs it. Okay, so it do not let it go. So that is the way you have to concentrate while you are studying. That is the concentration of a crane. Then Swan Nidra. Swan Nidra means sleep like a dog. Okay, this doesn't mean that you should reduce the hours of sleep. You should take a good sleep. That is very important. But don't oversleep, like you are sleeping in the daytime also, you are sleeping in the night also, and so that will make you very lazy. Okay, so sleep like a dog. If you are unable to sleep, get up, you can do other things. If you are feeling sleepy, you can take a good full sleep. So try to maintain your schedule of sleeping and do not oversleep. Then swalpahari. Swalpahari means eat little. Eat little doesn't mean that you stop eating, you stop skipping your breakfast and all to save time. That is not good, but you should always have a good meal, healthy meal. But excessive meal leads to laziness and drowsiness, and then you feel drowsy whole day, and then you are unable to concentrate. So that's why breakfast should be good. You should take a good breakfast like a king, and then gradually you should lower the calorie consumption, or multiple times you can have food instead of consuming at once lot of food and then feeling drowsy and then sleepy. And last one is home away from home, that is library. So many a times when you are in the cozy environment of your house, many a times you started reading on the table, and then you go on the bed, and then you start television, and then slowly you find that you have wasted 4 to 5 hours. So make one habit of going to library at least for 2 hours or 3 hours every day, so that at least you have those 3 hours every day in your schedule. So that will help you improve your study times. Okay, so this is my advice to you. If you follow these 5 advice, hopefully you will achieve what you are looking for. So thank you very much.